After the final prayer at my mother's graveside, the cold wind cutting through my thin suit, I stood alone with the weight of a lifetime of her quiet love still pressing on my chest. Then my wife's voice sliced the air like a blade. "Get out, loser," she shouted right there in the cemetery parking lot, her designer heels clicking on the asphalt as she shoved a duffel bag into my hands. "Your mommy's gone. You're nothing without her. Don't come back." I watched her drive away in the car we once shared, the same car she had begged me to buy on credit while I worked double shifts so she could keep her lifestyle. In that moment, I had nothing but the clothes on my back and the last soft words my mother ever spoke to me. Be kind, even when the world is not. If this story has already touched something in your heart, take a second to subscribe to Whispers of Heart 0.2. Hit that like button and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your support keeps these true stories of quiet strength alive. I grew up in a small house on the edge of a Midwestern town where the winters were long and the paychecks were short. My mother worked the night shift at a nursing home. Coming home with tired eyes and a thermos of leftover soup, she always shared with whoever needed it. She never had much, but she treated every person like they mattered. When the neighbor's kid fell off his bike, she bandaged his knee and gave him the last of our ice cream. When the old man down the street couldn't afford his medicine, she slipped an envelope under his door and never said a word. Kindness isn't weakness, she used to tell me while we washed dishes by hand. It's the only thing that stays when everything else is gone. I believed her. I carried that belief into my marriage. I met my wife at a community college night class. She was bright and ambitious, and I was the quiet guy who brought extra coffee for anyone who looked tired. For a while, it felt like a fairy tale. We scraped together a life, small apartment, secondhand furniture, dreams of something bigger. I worked construction by day and delivered pizzas at night so she could finish her degree. When the babies never came, I held her while she cried and told her we were enough. She smiled then. Later, the smiles grew rarer. Money became the measuring stick. She wanted the house in the better neighborhood, the car with the leather seats, the dinners at places where the menu had no prices. I kept working, kept giving, kept believing that if I just loved hard enough, everything would settle. My mother saw it long before I did. On her last clear afternoon, she took my hand in the hospital and whispered, "That girl doesn't see you. She sees what you can give her. Don't let her steal your heart's softness." I promised I wouldn't. 3 days after the funeral, the eviction notice arrived in the form of my wife's cold stare and that single sentence, "Get out, loser." She had already changed the locks. The bank accounts were empty. She had moved the money the day Mom died. I slept in my truck that first night, the engine running just enough to keep the windows from frosting. I thought about calling friends, but pride and shock kept my phone in my pocket. Instead, I drove to the only place that still felt like home, the little park where Mom used to feed the ducks every Sunday. An old man sat on the same bench she always chose. He was shivering in a thin jacket, feeding stale bread to the birds. I had $23 left. I bought 2 cups of coffee from the gas station and sat down beside him. We talked until the sun came up. He told me he had lost his apartment the week before. I gave him the 20 and kept the 3 for gas. He tried to refuse. I told him what my mother would have said. Take it. Kindness is a circle. That small act opened something. Over the next weeks, I found odd jobs, mowing lawns, hauling junk, washing dishes at a diner that stayed open late. Every time I got paid, I looked for someone who needed a meal more than I did. A single mom at the laundromat, a veteran sleeping under the overpass, a teenager who had run out of bus fare. I never told them my story. I just did what Mom taught me. Kindness became the only currency I trusted. One rainy Thursday, a lawyer tracked me down at the diner. He was polite, almost nervous, and he asked me to come to his office the next morning. I almost didn't go. I figured it was another collection call. Instead, he opened a thick folder and said the words that still make my hands shake. My mother had left me everything. Not the modest savings I expected. A private investment portfolio she had built in silence over 40 years, starting with a single inheritance from a distant relative she never mentioned. The number on the page was $950 billion. $950 billion. I laughed until I cried. Then I cried until I couldn't breathe. The first thing I did was not buy a mansion or a private jet. I paid off the old man's medical debt and found him a warm apartment. I set up a fund at the nursing home where Mom worked so no family would ever again choose between medicine and rent. I walked into the diner and told the owner the place was his free and clear, on the condition that anyone who walked in hungry would eat without a bill. Word spread slower than the internet, but it spread. People started calling the quiet man who paid for groceries with no questions the kindness guy. I never corrected them. The money was never the point. The money was simply the megaphone Mom had left me so her lesson could travel farther. Months later, my wife found me again. She stood on the porch of the small house I had bought near the park, looking thinner, eyes red. The lifestyle she had chased had collapsed under debt and empty promises. She said she was sorry. She said she had been wrong. Part of me wanted to close the door. The louder part, the part that still heard my mother's voice, invited her inside for coffee. I did not give her the fortune. I gave her the truth. I told her the inheritance existed, that I could have crushed her with it, and that I chose not to. Then I handed her a check large enough to start over, on the condition that she volunteer one day a week at the same nursing home where Mom had spent her life. She cried. I did not ask her to stay. Kindness does not demand repayment. It simply offers the chance. Today I still sit on that park bench some mornings. The ducks still come. Strangers still sit down and talk. I listen more than I speak. The fortune is managed by people smarter than me, so it can keep funding shelters, scholarships, and quiet acts that never make the news. Every night before I sleep, I remember the cemetery parking lot, the duffel bag, the word loser. And I smile, because that moment was not the end of my story. It was the moment the real story began. Kindness is not the soft option. It is the strongest force I have ever seen. It turned a man with nothing into a man who could change lives, and it turned a broken heart into a place where broken people can rest. If you are listening to this and life has kicked you out, called you a loser, left you with empty pockets and heavier eyes, hear me. The circle is still turning. One cup of coffee, one open door, one refusal to answer cruelty with cruelty. That is how the world heals. Start today. Someone is waiting for the kindness only you can give.